All right. So this is Dan Caleb. Uh, so Dan, he's a songwriter, solo artist, now rebranding as a band, as we as he just informed me. Look, Dan, for the first thing I would really like for you to do is to just introduce yourself as the musician and songwriter you are. Let people know who you are and in your own words, and then I'll take it from there, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, firstly. And so my name's Dan Caleb, and as a musician, I suppose I started playing quite late. When I was like 22, started playing guitar. Um, I was listening to pretty well exclusively Elliott Smith at
All
that
right.
time. Who was like my inspiration for songwriting, really, at that time. Um, and yeah, I kind of like just learned a lot of his songs, and I feel like I wanted to write songs in that kind of vein. For those who don't know, he's like a kind of a indie rock folk singer songwriter from the
Has
sort of
become
late
kind of
'90s, early
has
2000s.
become kind of a cultish figure in his own right, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he sort of hit kind of semi-fame when he was nominated for an Oscar for one of his songs that was in the film Good Will Hunting. Um, And yeah, I mean, amongst like singer-songwriters like me, I think, yeah, he's quite a cult figure.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of guy where when I first heard him, I thought, wow. And the more I delved in, the more I heard, I'd hear songs and be most of them I'd be like, wow, that's amazing. Some of them I'd be like, I'm not so sure. And then the more I listened to them, I was like, wow, like he was kind of on another level. It was
Yeah.
like an education for me to listen to those songs and really grasp what he was doing and how it affected me. It also affected me on a personal level listening to his song. They're very emotional.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was going through depression at the time. And yeah, it just kind of like was accompanied my depression, whether in a good way or a
Wow,
bad
that's
way, I don't
amazing.
know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like in High Fidelity, the book that became a film with John Cusack.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
one of the first lines is like, what came first, the music or the misery?
And
Like,
his most famous song is called Misery, right? Do you miss me? Miss
Miss
Misery?
Misery. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, he was seen as a kind of miserable singer-songwriter. But in reality, I think a lot of people who listen to him feel it really uplifts them. I
So
think I
this
felt that mostly as well.
which is weird, right? Why do you think you, who also has an interest in healing people in your own way, why do you think someone singing about their own misery might affect you in a positive way? Well, have you ever worked that in your
Hmm.
mind? Like, do you have any theories? What's
Not really, actually. I mean, I guess the first thing that I think of is just the sense of camaraderie, like that you're not alone
yeah.
in what you're going through. Like he really sometimes he would express things in a way that like I almost felt like he had like a an eye on me or something. He was
Wow.
describing my life in such a like he was his like lyrics were describing my situation sometimes. And I've actually like if you go on like his YouTube videos and stuff like that, you'll see comments where you won't have to like search too far to find people say that about his music.
It's
So he
like it's
really,
a bit
yeah,
like being noticed, right? And being understood.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, a friend of mine, he said um, at one time he was talking about one of my songs actually, like, and it was like really nice compliment. He sort of said in in pop music they write about what was it? He said like they write about generic things and
Yeah.
basically say nothing, and in sort of like more like artistic songwriting, I suppose, you write about your own personal like life, but then it actually says something generic. It says something that like other people
Yeah, yeah.
can
Can
relate to as
tap
well.
onto, right?
Yeah. So it's like creating the generic from something specific. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it's weird because from the very personal, it becomes something that a lot of people can connect with,
Mm.
and then as opposed to from the really non-personal at all of the pop of the cheesy pop music, like super non-personal, like yeah, plastic like
Mm.
ready-made, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just sounds, it's just noises and
Yeah, and it can be really cool in its
hey,
own
of
right, I
sure, of
guess.
course, yes. There's
But
no
for me at that time, I
yeah, yeah,
definitely
yeah.
connected more with Elliott Smith's music.
Well,
Um,
you have to stop being depressed so you can have fun, right? So first,
yeah,
I mean, you can enjoy a pop music if you're depressed, but then maybe you'll only be saved from depression from the right artist, and then you can go and listen to, you know,
yeah.
bubblegum pop music. That's the journey right there. It's really cool.
But everyone has their own journey, don't they? And you can't. I don't. Sometimes I wonder about someone like Elliott Smith, even about myself, really. Where a lot of the time when I was writing songs, I was depressed, but I'm not now, actually. But at that time, I would consider the question like, would I swap that? Like, as in, like, if I wasn't depressed, then I wouldn't have the songs. And
Yeah,
the answer that I came up with was that I didn't really have a choice. Like, they
cool.
just came hand in hand. Like, I couldn't. And actually, like, it made a lot of sense because I would go through something, or like I would try and the songwriting was a way for me to try and like verbalize, not just with lyrics, but with music as well, to really like verbalize emotions that I couldn't really like even get a handle on myself, let alone like, you know, tell other people. So, and then, yeah, it actually has like the knock on effect of kind of becoming a part of my personality and a part of my healing, like to write
Sure.
this song.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the two go kind of hand in hand.
And you, as you said, you don't really have a choice, and it's you have a choice whether you do something with your feelings and try to understand them, and maybe it ends up being uh, art that other people will connect with, which is amazing. But you don't really, I don't think you have a choice as in terms of well, yeah, it's not really a menu. Like, yeah, I'll have the depression if that gives me this and that, but
Mm.
like that's just not how
Yeah,
it
well, you
works.
can't click your fingers and be happy. I
Exactly.
suppose, yeah, that but I think the trap of like maybe the trap of not even like asking yourself that question could be something like it makes me think of like the tortured artist and the idea that an artist might actually want to stay tortured in order to write more music, and it could be a bit of a trap.
Yeah,
You have a lot of certainly like when I grew up really like loving like the grunge music scene. So
sure. Yeah, me too.
you got like Kurt Cobain who killed himself. Well,
Yeah. Well, most
probably
of
killed
them.
himself.
The only one standing
A
is
lot of them,
Eddie
yeah,
Vedder. It's the
yeah,
which
pretty
was
well,
which
yeah,
was the most upbeat of them all, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. He seems. I mean, I'm sure he's had his lows for sure.
Sure, sure. But I mean, if it, this it kind of tells us a lot as in terms of as a society, the people we look up to too. You know, like we've me and you, like for example, the people of this generation, we've spent years looking at these guys and listening to what they had to say and sing and like really enjoying. I thought about this the other day, which is like like 90% of these guys died horrible deaths. But then again, so did the apostles, you know. So I mean, it's like maybe dying a horrible death isn't something that I we should dismiss as being oh they shouldn't be worthy of being an example. That's not what I mean. But at the same
Mm,
time, I thought that there's like wow, as a society, we have been really looking very closely to these people who are kind of you know they really have some problems with them. So is it
mm,
healthy? You know, it's like in the past it used to be like the circus freaks would come to town and people with physical some different kinds of limbs or missing limbs would be of interest, and maybe now we're talking about people with like the circus freaks is like emotional circus freaks. We really like to watch that and listen to that and enjoy their misery. Do you think that do you
It's an
think this
interesting point, actually. I think, yeah, that's really interesting because I think like the understanding of like mental health has really like come to the fore in the last, I'm guessing, 100 years or so.
Yeah, tops,
So
right?
it's not, it's a pretty new thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think even in the sort of like 1950s and stuff like that, there was still a kind of a backward view on things
Sure,
like
yeah,
depression
for
and
sure.
um
It's a lot of stigma still lots of stigma, right? And it's
mm,
2021. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, another interesting point really, because I think the it is getting easier to live with mental health issues because there's more of an understanding and more of an openness, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that said, yeah, that the stigma doesn't go away. I think that's just because it's like slightly easier. There is still a stigma, and one still does have to be a bit wary of that. I think.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely a fascination. I'm fascinated with that kind of with those kind of people really. Um, and yeah, whether or not that maybe like serves towards their detriment as well. Like maybe it's possible that they wanted to stay in the limelight, or I mean, someone like Kurt Cobain sort of I don't know. I think maybe he mishandled being in the limelight so much. I don't think he really wanted it. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's just 1 million things coming at you all the time, right? 1 million things and places and invitations all the time. Everyone wants to be with you for the wrong reasons. It must
mm.
be really hard.
You might, maybe someone like that would start to question their identity as well, because yeah, I suppose a band like that sort of starts up as a sort of punk band and very, very kind of like anti-mainstream, really. And so it, yeah, you would kind of then all of a sudden the anti-mainstream thing becomes mainstream, and then what you're supposed to do then? It's like
Yeah.
you've become a parody of yourself or something.
I mean, I'm sure it's super tricky. I mean, I don't think a lot of people would have dealt better. It's really, I mean, this is really, it connects to what you were saying. Maybe people who would have dealt with that kind of situation better wouldn't have written the songs.